Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I welcome to all of you in the virtual learning system of Pakistan International School Thai. This is grade 10. We are studying biology. Today's our topic is peripheral nervous system and reflex action. I am Mrs. Kina Imtiaz. Okay, let's start. What is a peripheral nervous system? Peripheral nervous system is the second part of the nervous system. Now, what is a nervous system? First of all, what is a nervous system? The nervous system is an organ system containing a network of specialized cells called neurons. And there are two types of nervous system: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And today's our topic is peripheral nervous system. It is the second part of nervous system. Now, what about the central nervous system? Central nervous system, it includes brain and spinal cord. And in our previous lectures, we have studied brain and spinal cord. And today is peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, again, it divided into two parts, or you can say it has two pathways: motor neuron and sensory neurons. Now, motor neuron divided into two parts: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Now, what about the autonomic nervous system? Autonomic nervous system again subdivided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, now one by one we will see. First of all, what is peripheral nervous system? What is peripheral nervous system? Peripheral nervous system is the division of the nervous system containing all the nerves that lie outside of the central nervous system. We can say periphery means side. It means some nerves are arising from the brain and some nerves are arising from the spinal cord, and these nerves are going to different parts of the body on each side. That's why periphery means sides. Okay, and its function is its primary role to connect the central nervous system to the organ, limbs, and skin. These nerves extend from central nervous system to the outermost area of the body. Peripheral nervous system consists of two parts. Peripheral nervous system consists of nerves, and there are two types of nerves: spinal nerves and cranial nerves. And also peripheral nervous system consists of ganglia, nerves and ganglia. Now, first of all, about ganglia. What is a ganglia? Ganglia are the clusters of neurons cell body outside central nervous system. Now, what about the nerves? There are two types of nerves in peripheral nervous system: spinal nerves and cranial nerves. Now, first one you can see here, spinal nerves. Now, what are the spinal nerves? Spinal nerves are arising from the spinal cord, and there are 31 pair of the spinal nerves. And all these spinal nerves are mixed nerve in nature. Is it clear? Now, what about the cranial nerves? There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, and cranial nerves are some cranial nerves are sensory in nature, some are specially sensory nerves, some are motors, and some are mixed nerves. Now, what about the sensory nerves? Sensory nerves carriers of somatic sensory information, including touch, pressure, vibration, temperature, and pain. And number two, special sensory nerves. These are carriers of sensations such as smell, sight, hearing, and balance. And number three, motor neurons. Motor neurons, these are axons of somatic motor neurons. And what about the mixed neurons? Why these are called mixed nerves? Because mixed nerves are, it is a mixture of motor and sensory fibers. That's why these are called mixed nerves. Is it clear? Now, what about the cranial nerves? Cranial nerves are arising from the brain, and there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves, and these are sensory, motor, and mixed in nature. Okay. Now, further classification of nervous system. I told you before, sorry, peripheral nervous system. I told you nervous system, it consists of, it divided into two parts, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Now, further classification of the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, it is divided, it makes two pathways, motor and sensory. And you can say motor neurons and sensory neurons. Now, what is the function of the sensory neurons or sensory pathway? Sensory neurons, its function is carry impulses from receptors to the central nervous system. Now, these receptors are sensory organs. Is it clear? What is the function of sensory neurons? Sensory neurons carry impulses from receptors to the central nervous system, and these receptors are sensory organs. Now, what about the motor neurons? Motor neurons carry impulses from central nervous system to the glands, to the effectors. Motor neurons, its function is carry impulses from central nervous system to the effectors, and these effectors are muscles and glands. These effectors are muscles and glands. Now there are different types of muscles in our body, and that's why some are voluntary in actions and some are involuntary in action. That why motor neuron, again, it makes two pathways, two system. Motor neuron, it makes two system: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And again, autonomic nervous system, it is subdivided into nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, one by one, let's see autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, I told you it consists of cranial nerves and spinal nerves and ganglia, and it is subdivided into autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system. And autonomic nervous system, there are two systems are divided into two parts, two divisions, two systems. These are sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now let's see one by one. What is somatic nervous system? What is somatic nervous system? Somatic nervous system, it consists of all motor neurons, and that's why these motor neurons have direct control over skeletal muscles, and that's why all voluntary actions are controlled by the somatic nervous system. And somatic motor neurons have cell bodies in the spinal cord and just one neuron traveling from spinal cord to effector. Is it clear? Somatic nervous system, it consists of all motor neurons. Consists of all motor neurons. That's why all voluntary actions are controlled by the somatic nervous system. Now, what about the autonomic nervous system? Autonomic nervous system, it is the part of the peripheral nervous system, and all involuntary actions are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. For example, uh, blood flow, heartbeat, digestion, and breathing. And autonomic nervous system further divided into sympathetic system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, what about the sympathetic nervous system? And these two systems, sympathetic system and parasympathetic system, have different nature. Both have different nature. That's why uh, sympathetic nervous system called flight or fight responses, regulates flight or fight responses, and parasympathetic nervous system helps maintain normal body function and conserves physical resources. Now, what about the nature? Sympathetic nervous system is excitatory in nature. It is excitatory in nature, and parasympathetic nervous system it is inhibitor in nature. It is inhibitor in nature, and in excitatory due to the excitatory nature, sympathetic nervous system prepare our body in emergency situation. That's why it is called fight or flight responses. For example, during fighting, what happens? Sympathetic nervous system increase over heart rate, increase respiratory system, inhibit the digestion and dilate the pupil. Now what happened? This is the you can say stress situation or fighting situation. It should be normal. It should be normal. Now how it will be normalized? How it will be normalized? When the stress ends, then what happened? The parasympathetic nervous system takes action. Is it clear? To normalize this condition, parasympathetic nervous system takes action and normalize all the function. How? It causes pupil contract, promotes digestion, and slow the rate of heartbeat and breathing rate. Is it clear? This is about the sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now you can see here comparison of some effects of sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now first one I told you before, but you can see here these comparisons, and you can copy from here. Sympathetic nervous system. What are the effects of sympathetic nervous system? I told you these two systems are different in nature. Sympathetic nervous system are excitatory in nature, and parasympathetic nervous system inhibitor in nature. And sympathetic nervous system prepare our body in an emergency situation, and these are called fight or flight. And what about the parasympathetic nervous system? Parasympathetic nervous system when it takes action, then normalize the when stress ends, then it normalize the condition or situation. Is it clear? Now one by one you can see differences or comparison between these two. Sympathetic nervous system increase cardiac output, increase, and a parasympathetic nervous system decrease cardiac output. Sympathetic nervous system increase blood pressure, and parasympathetic nervous system decrease blood pressure. Sympathetic nervous system dilate bronchioles, and parasympathetic nervous system constrict bronchioles. And a parasympathetic nervous system number 4 increase ventilation rate, and a sympathetic nervous system, and parasympathetic nervous system decrease ventilation rate. Sympathetic nervous system dilates pupil, and a parasympathetic nervous system constricts pupil. Is it clear? This is the comparison between sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now our next topic is reflex action. Next topic is reflex action. How you can define it? It is an immediate response to a specific stimulus without conscious control. It is called reflex action. Generally, we have studied about muscles in our body on the base of the action. There are two types of muscles in our body, voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. Now, how voluntary muscles function or work? Voluntary muscles work according to our will, work according to our will, and all the voluntary actions are controlled by the brain. Is it clear? In all those actions, these are voluntary in nature, and these are controlled by the brain. You can say brain is the higher center of our body, and we can say that brain is the coordinator of voluntary actions. Is it clear? In this reflection, we will study about the spinal cord and brain. So brain is the coordinator of voluntary actions. I told you in our body, different types of muscles are working in, you can say two types, one are voluntary and one are involuntary. And voluntary muscles or voluntary actions are controlled by the brain. So who is the coordinator of the voluntary actions? Brain. Brain is the coordinator of voluntary actions. Now what about the involuntary actions or involuntary muscles? Involuntary muscles, then the actions, you can say when the action is not under control of our will, then nerve impulses are not reached to the higher center of the brain. Then in this case, who is the coordinator? Spinal cord. Spinal cord will be coordinated. And these are called involuntary actions, and involuntary actions are controlled by the spinal cord. And at a time, these actions you can say because not reached to the brain, and these are called very quick reactions. Called very quick actions. And when these actions are involuntary in nature, involuntary actions and also very quick actions, then these actions are called reflex action. Is it clear? Then that action is called reflex action. Now next is reflex arc. You can say the pathway of a reflex action is called reflex arc. What is a reflex arc? The pathway of a reflex action is called reflex arc. Now what happened in this action? In reflex arc, the stimulus is received. These are the sense organ receptors. These are the sense organ receptors. Now what happened in the reflex arc when stimulus is received by the receptors, then it is processed through sensory nerves to the spinal cord. And from the spinal cord, the information passes through the motor nerves and then motor nerves send to the effectors. And these effectors are muscles and glands for the response. Now, this reflex or we will see in the diagram, then you can understand. This is the pathway of reflex action. Pathway of reflex action. And the common and most common example of the reflex action is withdrawal of hand after touching a hot object, after touching a flame. You can see in this picture, this is the flame stimulus, and this is on. This is on. Now, what happened in this action? In this reflex action, spinal cord acts as a coordinator. Spinal cord acts as a coordinator. I told you involuntary actions are controlled by the spinal cord, and this is involuntary action. Now, what happened in this action? Spinal cord works as a coordinator, and heat stimulates this this heat stimulates temperature in 10 receptors in the body. This is the receptor. Now, what happens? This nerve, you can say it is a nerve impulse. This nerve impulse is will be generated here, and it carries by sensory neurons to the motor neuron, to the interneuron. You can see this is the interneuron of spinal cord. This whole is a spinal cord, and here you can see two neurons, motor neuron, sensory neuron, and this is the interneuron, relay neuron or interneuron. Now, what happens when our hand touch this heat or this object? Then, then nerve impulse will generate, which carry by sensory neuron to the interneuron of the spinal cord. From this interneuron, what happens? The impulse is passed to motor neuron. This is the motor neuron, and this motor neuron carry it to muscles of arm. These are the muscles of arm. What happens? These muscles will contract and withdraw to hand. Is it clear? These are the muscles of arm. When motor neurons reach here, muscles will contract, okay, and to withdraw hand. This is the example of reflex or now same time. What happens? Other interneuron transmit or send nerve impulse or send message to the brain so that the person becomes aware of pain and he knows there is a heat. Is it clear? This is the example or this is the pathway of a reflex action. Okay, students, I hope inshallah you will understand it. Today's our topic is finished. Alhamdulillah. Okay, let's see. Allah Hafiz.